It's 21st of March 26, and this might be a long, muddled video just to try and get my thoughts out on this. We've just had Eid. I think it was yesterday. I don't still understand it totally. Do you have Ramadan for 40 days and then Eid? I don't know, we're all going to have to understand these. These have been practiced in Britain for years, but I think it's maybe suited people that we've not known until there are a lot of chain migrations going on. But now the chain migration's at a certain level where MPs can get elected, etc. And so it's basically like this is what. Well, I don't know if they do this in wherever the Pakistan, Bangladesh. I don't know, but yeah, there was that big thing. Was it yesterday? No, it must have been Monday or something, where they were praying after Ramadan or something. In Trafalgar Square, men at the front, women at the back, and a journalist in the Daily Mail who's a former Muslim from Pakistan, I think, and she went from Pakistan to Germany. So I don't know if she regarded that as escaping that side of the world. I don't know if that's correct, I don't know why she moved. Maybe, from Pakistan to Germany's nowadays it would be normal, but for a German to move to Pakistan, maybe people were thinking that, are you alright or whatever? I don't know. But anyway, and from Germany she's moved to Britain, and now she's a Daily Mail journalist, and she's acting like a sort of emperor's new clothes, I'd say. I've only read 2 of her articles so far, but she was saying, I could be wrong about this, but in Pakistan, usually the men pray in the mosque and the women don't attend. They pray in the home. I think she said something like that, I don't know. But she's not happy about this, but she's saying it's... I mean, personally, the way I see it, it shouldn't have occurred. If we'd had a referendum any time between 1948 and now, probably it wouldn't be happening at all. But it's happening because our governments have made people citizens, and so they're British, and we're a democracy. So, I'm not saying I like it or don't like it, but really, if we did a referendum decades ago, it probably wouldn't have happened at all, So, yeah, and we don't know how these people feel about Pakistan or Bangladesh or whatever. I'm talking about the people praying and that, they seem to like being British, I don't know if they would consider America, Australia. No, I'm not saying they should have to move. I'm just saying, do they think that's the final upgrade or anything like that, But yeah, and I would just forget it anyway. I'm just getting muddled up here. But what I'm really glad about, first of all, is that Nick Timothy made a comment about it, and he's an MP. And I said that Katie Lamb's very, she's maybe outflanking reform in terms of immigration. And Nick Timothy, I'd put him there as well. And it's weird because he used to be an advisor, I think, to Theresa May, who was a total disaster. I don't know if she was listening to his advice, but on immigration, he's turning out to be really good. So Tories have got those 2 stars, really, which personally I think are holding the party, keeping the party together. But also Kemi Badenoch, personally I've always been sort of impressed in general by her standing her ground, which is ironic because she's an anchor baby, and she was the typical example of how the system was wrong. I think her parents were professors and they didn't have any connection to Britain. They came over maybe a month before Kemi was about to be born in 1980. Had her here. That made her a British citizen. Gave her British citizenship. And then he went straight back to Nigeria, and she was brought up there until she was about 16. And then she says she's considered USA. But then she came to UK and she considered it a golden ticket or a thingy. And in 1981, I think Margaret Thatcher abolished that. Well, it depends how you see it, whether you see it as a loophole or just whatever. She abolished that. If you're just born here with no connection, it doesn't make you British. But anyway, so Kemi came here. I think she said that she was quite outspoken when she was younger. I don't know, but yeah. But also she said in 2024 that when she was Nigerian, I think she's given up her Nigerian citizenship right about in the 2000s, early 2000s or something. But when she was Nigerian, she didn't consider herself Nigerian. She considered herself Yoruba, which is an ethnicity. And she didn't feel a connection with the Islamic tribes of the north. I think she called enemies. And this is in a podcast in 2024, you know. So does that mean that in Britain we're allowed to view ourselves as ethnicity now rather than nationality, you know? And I suppose in a way we should think of it as the Tory leader is called Kemi Olefunto Adegoke. And I think Nigeria citizenship in the last few years is around about 1,000 a year or something. Well, I'll check. Apparently there's been an increase of foreigners made citizens in Nigeria recently, and 2023 there was 385. This included nationals from the UK, USA, Lebanon and Italy. And in 2022 there was 286, and in 2018 there was 335, and in the UK last year I think there was 287,000. So yeah, that's Nigeria's policy towards citizenship and asylum, I think. Apparently there's a Lebanese Nigerian community, many of whom are second or third generation residents involved in the manufacturing and service industries. And apparently now there's a brown card for Nigeria in 2023. They introduced the brown card, a new legal instrument for permanent residency to make it easier for foreign nationals to live and contribute to Nigeria without necessarily holding a passport immediately. And you can get citizenship by investment, and this has just come in late 25, early 26. Yeah, here's about Kemi's parents and Mrs. Thatcher. Yeah. Her parents did not have a permanent legal connection to the UK at the time of her birth. Her father was a GP and her mother was a professor of physiology. They were living and working in Nigeria, but her mother travelled to London specifically for medical care and maternity services. Because her parents were not settled, they didn't have permanent residency or citizenship, she only gained her British passport because of the laws that existed at that exact moment. And then Margaret Thatcher put through the British Nationality Act in 1981, but it didn't come into effect until January 1st, 1983. She was born in 1980 anyway. I don't know. Maybe she heard about this. I don't know. It ended automatic birthright citizenship. And the new rule, being born in the UK only makes you a citizen if at least one parent is a British citizen or is settled, has indefinite leave to remain in the UK. Badenoch herself has famously described her British passport as her Willy Wonka golden ticket, and that's a good way to look at it, in my opinion. Personally, I would call the West Disneylands, you know, with the best one being Disneyland USA. Disneyland UK is the second tier, I would say. Maybe the top tier's America, or maybe on its own. Maybe then Canada, Australia, UK, and then maybe West Europe after that, I don't know. And that's it really, I think, mostly. Maybe you could view the West like that, or not. Maybe you could view it as places where people want to move to and want to, I don't know, they talk about values. I mean, things like people of the left talk about British values, or centre left, you know, the female MPs will talk about British values. I mean, that probably didn't used to include the burqa, but now it does. I mean, I don't see if big British communities that are getting bigger all the time, the FGM is part of their tradition, then I think they've got a right to elect an MP to promote that or whatever. I'm just saying I'm totally against it. And in the past, I think the left, especially the far left, and especially females, will have been against the burqa maybe at some point. I don't know. Whereas now they're not. They're totally in favour of it, it seems. So, yeah. What am I talking about anyway? Well, my point was, like, in a democracy, the people decide, you know, it's not, say, centre-left or far-left people who are saying British values, because it's their British values, really, they're saying. And really, I could say, well, you're being racist. Like I gave an example there, right? If other British communities want that, you're being racist by saying they can't have it because it's not British values. I mean, they're British, you know. So if they weren't here, that would be fair enough. But they are here, so yeah. Just talking about this birthright thing. Apparently, she says it was just immense luck she got it. Finding out that I did have that British citizenship was a marvel to so many of my contemporaries, so many of my peers. Well, why? I mean, say if I had citizenship to Nigeria, I wouldn't be thinking of that as a Willy Wonka moment, you know, golden ticket or whatever. So why does she feel that? Does she not like Nigeria? You know, is that how her peers feel as well? Why do they not like Nigeria? What is it about there? It's a beautiful, warm country. I think that's the only reason people should be moving, really. Everywhere should be flourishing economically, and the people should be really pleasant and all that. So, I don't know. I mean, Britain's cold, wet, and windy. Really, we should just be moving to warm weather and beautiful landscapes, etc. Just take it for granted that the people are going to be nice and the economy is going to work because everybody behaves. Yeah. So anyway, what was she saying? I feel like I have won Willy Wonka's golden ticket, a safe, stable roof over our heads. Context, she often uses this to explain why she moved back to the UK at 16. I mean, she didn't even wait to 18. As her parents saw no future for her in Nigeria at the time. I mean, why not if they were middle class, you know? I mean, they were probably upper middle class, really, in a way. Like, so, it's telling us, accidentally telling stuff, really, I would say. Like, the anchored baby denial, 24 to 26. In various interviews, including a detailed profile in the Times, etc., I was not an anchor baby. My parents did not even know I was eligible for a British passport until I was a teenager. Context, she asserts that her mother came to the UK in 1980 for medical treatment, not specifically to secure citizenship for her child, and that they returned to Nigeria shortly after her birth. I mean, it's a bit strange, really. I don't know. I mean, was it nowhere in Nigeria, Africa, or in between? I don't know. And during the Tory conference in October 24, she said things like, "We are not a dormitory, we are not a sponge. If you want to stay here, we live in an age where you need to be very committed." She argued that the UK should only grant citizenship to those who have shown a real commitment to the country. The 15-year rule proposal, yeah, I totally agree with that. As a start, really, to, I think we need a pause, really. I think Advance said that, a pause. Should restore Britain. We'll be going that way. As leader of the Tory party, she proposed a significant shift in how people should be able to settle. Citizenship should only go to people who have shown a real commitment. I want immigrants to wait at least 15 years before they become eligible. This is to ensure integration before the golden ticket of a passport is handed out. And why is it a golden ticket for Britain? I mean, getting citizenship for Pakistan, which is almost impossible, but is that a golden ticket? You know, Bangladesh, India, Nigeria. Or if not, why not? Why do you consider it not to be? identity and passport. And she said things like, yeah, in August 25 in a podcast, I'm Nigerian through ancestry, but by identity I'm not really. I have not renewed my Nigerian passport in decades. This was seen as many of her final cutting of the ties to ensure her political identity remained British. And here's some more quotes. Her recent comments emphasise a complete shift towards a British identity, often using Nigeria as a negative contrast to highlight the stability of the UK. So it seems that she doesn't have a very good view of Nigeria. And I don't know why that is, because it's a beautiful, warm country. So we've just got to assume stuff, I don't know. We don't hear many far lefties moving to... I'm sure a lot of them move to America and Australia, but we don't hear a lot of them moving to Nigeria, for instance, or going to study there. So she said, in her most definitive statement on the subject, she distanced herself from being Nigerian in anything other than a biological sense. I'm Nigerian through ancestry, by birth. Well, she's not actually, despite not being there, because of my parents. But by identity, I'm not really. I don't identify with Nigeria anymore. Most of my life has been in the UK, and I've just never felt the need to. On belonging and alien, I remember never quite feeling that I belonged there in Nigeria. In Nigeria, she felt like an outsider, which she uses to explain her lack of dual loyalty and why she left. She frequently cites the deteriorating state of Nigeria in the 1990s as a reason for her return to the UK, framing it as an escape from a failing system. I think the reason that I came back here was actually a very sad one, and it was that my parents thought there's no future for you in this country. Well, some Lebanese disagree with her, but they might be second or third generation, so they had to wait a while. So, on ethnic identity versus national identity. In a comment that sparked significant backlash within Nigeria, she distinguished between her ethnic roots and the Nigerian state, specifically referencing the conflict with North Nigeria. And she said, I am Yoruba, not Nigerian. I have nothing in common with the people from the north of the country. These were our ethnic enemies. And this was cited in Unheard. Well, I don't know. Yeah, that's a YouTube channel, isn't it? And that was in last year, say July 25. On citizenship rules, she often uses Nigeria's own restrictive citizenship laws to justify her hardline stance on UK immigration, arguing that the UK is too naive compared to other nations. Yeah, I would say we're too nice, basically. It's not so much naivety, it's niceness. It's virtually impossible, for example, to get Nigerian citizenship. I can't give it to my children because I'm a woman. Yet loads of Nigerians come to the UK and stay for a relatively free period of time. Acquire British citizenship. We need to stop being naive. And that was in July 25, she said that. Yeah, so I think that's really interesting, and it's pretty based, I would say. But she's comparing it to the Nigerian immigration rules, etc., and Nigeria as a state. And she was in charge of a trade deal in 2024 between Britain and Nigeria. And the deal was designed to unblock trade barriers. She was very careful to clarify it did not include visa concessions. This partnership is about legal services and financial services. It is not about a change in the immigration system. We want to help Nigeria reduce its trade deficit, not increase the number of people leaving. Yeah, because in these deals, it's a sort of brain drain. I think Modi does that as well. Why they do that, I don't know. Modi, you would think they would want to keep their best. Or even if you just want to look at it in pride or whatever. But it doesn't seem to be the case when they're dealing with West countries. During negotiations, Nigerian ministers often push for easier mobility, i.e. visas, for business people. Badenoch was noted for holding a firm line that trade deals do not equal more visas. And brain drain, she said this in July 25. Badenoch argued that helping the best and brightest Nigerians get visas to the UK is actually harmful to Nigeria. Yeah, this is how all these deals should be seen. If it involves these countries getting visas to the UK or whatever, it should be regarded as brain drains, in my opinion, or even just drainage of labour, manual labour or whatever, people that could make their economy flourish. It's not a benefit, this is what she said, it's not a benefit to Nigeria when their best doctors and teachers leave to come here. We should not be proud of a system that strips developing nations of the talent they need to build their own futures. She often uses this moral argument to justify capping work visas for professionals from West Africa, and I'm guessing Labour and the Greens would argue totally against that. They'd be saying that's shocking, what she's saying, all this sort of stuff. And she's brought in a 15-year proposal that the Tories think, so I totally agree with that. That's even better than the 10-year that Shabana Mahmood was bringing in. Because Shabana Mahmood, brought in things that I think some Labour MPs have said that they were sort of, even the Tories wouldn't have brought these in, and she suggested them last September or whatever, and they were to come into thing. But the main one was indefinite leave to remain, which is currently 5 years. So if you go to most countries, you don't get indefinite leave to remain, or it's 15 years, 20 years, 25 years. And even then it might be that after all that, if you apply for citizenship, it's still up to the government to decide or whatever. So whereas in the West, it can be stuff like you only need to wait 5 years, then you've got access to all benefits and all that. I thought they already got access to benefits anyway, like child tax credits, housing benefit, or whatever. And then after 10 years, you become a citizen. You are expected to become a citizen by the government, not because the people want it. So Shabana was going to take it up to 10 years, and it was going to be retrospective. But it looks like Keir's dropped it, and I think Keir Starmer's the worst Prime Minister ever, because just as a person, he seems really intolerant, first of all, and it feels like Shabana Mahmood's actually reversing a lot of his loopholes that he brought in when he was a human rights lawyer to let people stay on immigration back in the 2000s. So she's undoing a lot of loopholes that Keir probably forced the government to change, although the government probably didn't need to do them, but they did anyway. But so she's trying to make indefinite leave to remain to go from 5 to 10 years, and she says it's not only, I don't know what she called them, whether she called them ethnic British or native British or what. It's not. She said it's not just them that are concerned. My own community is concerned too, and I don't know who she means by that. I'm taking that she means that her local Pakistani British community, they feel that way, because Pakistan, it's almost impossible to get citizenship. So maybe that's how they're viewing it, and maybe it's not chain migration that they're worried about. It's been a sort of free-for-all over the last few years, It's something that you can't really talk about in the UK, I'm trying to think of how she's thinking. Why would she say something like that, But anyway, she's done stuff, and again, Labour MPs have said the Tories wouldn't even do this, and they were right until Kemi Badenoch came in and say, so it is ironic that Kemi Badenoch and Shabana Mahmood are being a lot stricter on immigration than we've had in the past, and maybe it's because they're looking at it and thinking this is ridiculous or whatever. As Kemi says, she thinks the UK are being too naive, but I would say it's actually we're being too nice and we're too scared of being called the R word or something like that, So yeah, they were bringing in this 10-year things, but now it looks like the government, Keir Starmer, is going to drop the idea. Recent reports from March 26 suggest they are in a state of full retreat or intense internal negotiation due to a massive backlash from within the Labour Party itself. The current situation They've got an internal rebellion. More than 100 Labour MPs, including high-profile figures like Deputy PM Angela Rayner, have reportedly challenged the policy. Rayner famously described parts of the proposal as un-British and a breach of trust. Yeah, I think she said that on Tuesday or something. So if we've got 100 Labour MPs that are going to vote against it, he might not even get it through Parliament anyway. I think he's got what's he got a majority of? Yeah, he's got 404. So if 100 MPs voted against it, he wouldn't be able to get it through because you need about 320. Because people like Sinn Féin don't attend, all this sort of thing. The Speaker doesn't vote. I think it's wrong that the Speaker is neutral. I mean, just get a Speaker in who's not a politician, basically. Because that means his seat, they don't even get to vote at the election. Somebody stood against him this time, which I'm grateful for. But yeah, so if 100 MPs voted against it, he wouldn't get it through anyway. Labour MPs, I mean. But it just means that Labour will die off faster, in my opinion, you know, because they've lost the native British vote, really, in my opinion. They're going to lose the Muslim vote. I think that was always on the cards. I think they're going to lose the whole ethnic current minority vote because they're going to start, well, possibly, like in East London, there's the Aspire Party, which all the councillors seem to be Bangladeshi British. And that used to be a Labour area, a really strong Labour area. There's a few independents who seem to speak on possibly they're getting their vote from one part. And then there may be two umbrella parties. I mean, recently, around about 2024, the Muslim Vote website was first founded to advise Muslims on how to vote. And it says it's for the Ummah, which means all Muslims, including Shia and Sunni, etc. I mean, if you've seen Sunni and Shia discuss on X, you know, you'll be thinking, well, there seems to be a bit of debate amongst these two groupings. I mean, I'm putting it mildly because we live in a Stasi state and that. I think female Green voters will be surprised at the sort of posts that go in between Hindus and Muslims and Sunni and Shia, etc. I think they'll be a bit surprised, you know, in the future. I don't know. But, yeah, sticking point. A major source of the anger is a plan to apply the 10-year rule retrospectively to people already in the UK on the 5-year path. Many MPs argue this is legally and morally questionable. Yeah, because this is to do with the Boris wave, because Boris brought in the biggest migration waves ever in Britain over a 3-year period. And they first started coming in 2021, and they've been here 5 years now, so some of them are already get indefinite leave to remain. I mean, the view is that all these people are going to ask for citizenship or ask for indefinite leave to remain because for some reason they don't want to return. You know, they were brought over for supposedly a social and healthcare emergency. But for some reason they don't want to return. We don't know why. They've got beautiful warm homelands, probably pretty homogenous as well. We don't know why that is. Yeah, nobody asks these sort of questions or whatever, you know. We just, if somebody's to be removed back to their homeland, we have to view it as a terrible thing. The Greens will say it's absolutely outrageous, it's a terrible thing. What are they telling us about their homeland then, you know? Because it even happens for Jamaica or something. I mean, a lot of rich white people go there, or British people or whatever, on holiday. But the Greens are saying it's a terrible place, apparently. I don't know. But, official stance, number 10, has recently pivoted to saying they are considering responses to the public consultation, which received over 200,000 entries. And most of them will be against the 10-year rule, I would imagine, because these people want indefinite leave to remain, or they want relatives to get it, or, you know, their thing. The people who would maybe vote against it in a referendum they're probably not going to bother writing about this, so this is often political shorthand for a policy being kicked into the long grass or heavily watered down. Some minor changes like tougher English language requirements and criminal record checks are still scheduled to begin rolling out as early as March 26, so that's like 5 days away. But the core 10-year extension for all routes is now looking much less certain for its planned autumn 26 launch. Yeah, it's not going to happen, basically, because he's not got the votes, probably. But also, he's sort of mixed up. I mean, I think he's actually like Trump, although there's no upside at all, really. He's just totally confused. I mean, he made that Island of Strangers speech, which outflanked reform, was probably the strongest speech on that issue since 1968. And then a month later, he said he regretted it, and he's all over the place. He's intolerant as well. He's like a strict dad that when you grow up, you think, my dad was strict and he was, I didn't like him either, You're not thinking my dad was strict, but it was worth it. He was right. It was worth it, And also, because like Trump, once Keir's out of office, whenever that is, I've not known someone to. He's got the same brass neck, all that Mandelson stuff, and he's still there. He seems to just see it out. I don't know why, how. I don't know how Labour can't get rid of him. It seems that Labour can't get rid of their politicians, their leaders, whereas it's really easy for the Tories, which is good, in my opinion, because it should be like football managers. If you think you've made a mistake, you need to get them out quick. If you make a mistake, you want to change them quick. You don't want them, Keir's been there 7 years now as a Labour leader, and he done that in false pretences even as well. He's U-turned on nearly everything. I don't even know what things he believes in now, because he U-turns on things he believes in as well, because he doesn't think they're popular or total mess. He's the worst Prime Minister ever, in my opinion, and the only dislikable one that I can recall. So, economic impact, the Home Affairs Committee has said that the changes could worsen adult social care, blah blah, but they're probably totally woke. Child poverty, blah blah blah, legal challenges, human rights laws, yeah, we know all that. The policy is still technically on the table, but the Mahmood plan is currently being hammered by the Labour backbench. We likely won't know if it's fully dead or just refined until the formal response to the consultation is published later this spring. I believe in the Swiss electoral system, so something like that should go to a referendum, and then you're taking it out of the politicians' hands. So we've got a very undemocratic system now because it's so old, basically. Yeah, back to this Eid thing. So we had the Ramadan, the iftar thing on Monday, or was it, or something? The Sadiq was hosting a charity, was hosting it. Apparently this charity has been doing these outdoor events, and let me see, I'm just going to check about them. Personally, I find Sadiq is very sort of pugnacious and sort of chutzpah, if you want to call it that. To me, there seems a lot of places around the world that are ego-based societies, but it looks as if a lot of people there want to move to the West. That's just an impression. I don't know if that's correct or not. Whereas there's just a few countries where people cooperate in that and are regarded as desirable societies. I could be wrong about that, And Britain only colonised a few places like America, Australia, New Zealand, and I would say Canada. I would say maybe there's very few countries that people seem to want to move to, but this 5 are maybe the top countries, I don't know. And Western Europe, who took on those views. Maybe not East Europe, and although Poland's becoming a desirable place. Personally, I can see a point where Brits want to move to Poland, personally. We probably wouldn't get in, though. They'd probably get quite strong immigration, really, I don't know, but yeah. No, it's just an impression, so, and it feels like I don't know if encroachment's the right word, but you're not allowed to encroach yourself or whatever, encroach back. It feels that way, you know. Maybe some societies are seen as really nice, and whereas others are seen as you've got to be pushy. I don't know. Yeah, and it's back to Kemi Badenoch again for the answer, and I'm surprised. Well, I'll say this later, but in September 24, during the Tory party leadership campaign, Kemi Badenoch wrote an article for the Sunday Telegraph and gave subsequent interviews where she stated that, quote, not all cultures are equally valid. In her article, she argued that the UK should be more selective about who is allowed to enter the country based on their cultural values. Her quote is, "We cannot be naive and assume immigrants will automatically abandon ancestral ethnic hostilities at the border, or that all cultures are equally valid. They are not." I mean, personally, I don't know why she hasn't been questioned by the police on this, and I think anyone who is questioned should refer to this in the questioning, possibly even say report it, if you're in a police station at the time or whatever, to show how much of a Stasi state we are, basically. Because we did have the woke police, and then we had Keir's emergency law, ultra woke police, where you get arrested on a Monday for a tweet or something. You were up in court on the Wednesday and expected to plead guilty, and you would get jail time. That's so. What kind of democratic free speech state is that? So it was bad enough when it was woke police, and then Keir made it even worse. So that's what she said, and also I think Keir should maybe refer himself for questioning. Keir should maybe refer himself to questioning over his Island of Strangers speech. Some of the quotes from that. Basically flanked reform, I would say, with that speech. When pressed to clarify her comments, she said she wasn't referring to practices and norms rather than superficial things like food address. She highlighted, she was referring to practices and norms rather than superficial things. Well, that's what we all assumed, really, Equal rights. She argued that culture where women do not have equal rights are less valid than British culture. And who made that British culture, child marriage. She cited cultures that permit child marriage as an example of those who are not equally valid. Political ideology. She expressed concern over ancestral hostilities, specifically pointing to recent immigrants who hate Israel, she says, stating that such sentiments have no place here. And in later speeches, like in March 26, she expanded on these themes in a speech on integration, where she argued that while Britain is a multiracial country, it should not be a multicultural one if that means a collection of tribes with competing values. She stated that culture is deeper than cuisine, defining it as behaviours, pattern, expectations, and attitudes. She didn't say patterns. Attitudes towards authority and free speech. Yeah, so, Kemi is the one to refer to, really. Yeah, and just a word about I think of using the word phobia. Phobia is a fear, so I don't think that should be made a crime if you're afraid. If you want to use a word, then use anti, I would suggest. So you could use anti in this case rather than phobia. You can't help being afraid. Maybe people can explain and it will make you unafraid. But I think the things we're seeing so far, phobia, sort of is the right word, really. I would think. It's not really anti. I don't know how Kemi feels about the full burqa, etc., but I would say the far left, the Greens, and the centre left are all in favour of the burqa now, or I don't know what you even call these things, the full hijab, whatever. They regard themselves as the guardians of women's rights, and those sort of things now are British traditions that let women express themselves as they wish. I'm just giving some quotes from the Greens on the burqa or hijab. Let's see, I've got this one here. The government must ensure no woman is ever forced to choose between her faith and her safety or participation in public life. We must protect the right of Muslim women to wear the hijab or niqab without fear of state-mandated bans or street-level harassment. That's in 2025. And I'm guessing she's an atheist as well, so you've got to keep this in mind. These are all probably atheists. Here's another one. We must face down the forces of prejudice. And that includes the right to express one's identity through dress without facing discrimination. Apparently that was in 2026, addressing inclusivity in public spaces. Then we've got another one. Banning what women wear is not liberation, it is just another form of control. We stand in solidarity with women against any attempts to criminalise their religious expression. That was in 2024. There's another one. Forcing women to uncover is just as oppressive as forcing them to cover. True equality means defending a woman's right to autonomy over her own body and her own clothes. Yeah, I don't know why I'm quoting this now actually, but yeah. And of course, I think we've also to keep in mind about religious and that. I think most native Brits now are atheist. Some might still go to church or whatever, but don't believe or whatever. They just like the tradition, etc. So we've got that, and now we've got the Ramadan's, I think, big thing now. So keeping in that mind that most native Brits are atheists, that's how we're looking on this. Probably even the politicians as well, or the ones on native Brit anyway. So the Trafalgar Square thing, it was organised by the Ramadan Tent Project, who seem to be organising these sort of places, these ones that we've been seeing in signature places of Britain, landmark places of Britain. It was founded in 2013. It's an award-winning charity that runs the Open Iftar initiative. Their mission is to bridge communities and create spaces for dialogue and connection. Yeah, because the other thing we don't understand personally as native Brits, we don't understand their real things. But I think that's maybe suited the situation until now. I think the best thing that could have happened to Britain was if newcomers after 1948, we had about 20 MPs saying around about 1952 of the newcomers, and we had the Notting Hill, that was like the late 50s or something, wasn't it? But yeah, so that we could see how it was going to go. Whereas what's happened is it's been secreted, sort of underneath. Maybe that suited people, and now it's all coming out into the open. And we can see the way Britain's going to become, whether you think that's good, or to feel that it's going to be a really good thing. If you feel fear or whatever, apparently you might get accused of stuff, if you feel anxious or fear. So this was to create spaces for dialogue and connection. In 2026, they hosted 18 open iftars across 8 UK cities, including unique venues like Silverstone Circuit, AFC Wimbledon and the National Gallery. And are these all is this Umar, or is it just Sunni, or is it just one brand of Sunni? So where did they hold them this year? So other venues apart from Trafalgar Square were the National Gallery, Battersea Arts Centre, the Guildhall, Soho Theatre Walthamstow, one of the newest additions to the circuit, 22 Bishopgate, an event held at one of the city's tallest skyscrapers, the British Library, and the national venues across the UK, in Glasgow at the Glasgow City Chambers, Cambridge at the world-renowned King's College, Birmingham in the city's central community spaces, Blackburn, Bradford and Manchester, various heritage and community sites. Most of these were a free ticket booked in advance via the Ramadan Tents newsletter, as they often reach capacity quickly due to high demand. And it looked like in Trafalgar Square and the one in Birmingham that had 30,000, probably Brummies, the women were at the back. So I was just wondering, because I don't understand it. So it seems at the meal, during the meal itself, the iftar meal, the atmosphere is very communal. People of all faiths, genders and backgrounds sit side by side on the ground to share food. The event's primary goal is turning strangers into friends, etc. So there is no strict front or back segregation for the dinner. You will often see families, friends and strangers of different genders sitting together in the same rows to eat. Whereas for prayer, when it comes time for the Maghrib prayer, the layout usually follows traditional Islamic practice. Men typically gather in the front rows, women typically gather in the rows behind the men, and non-Muslim guests or those not participating in the prayer usually move to the sides or the back of the cafeteria to observe or wait for the meal to begin. Yeah. Plus, in many countries around the world, beautiful warm countries, this is the norm, really, and we don't know why people have come to Britain or why they don't want to. We don't live in Pakistan or whatever. We don't know if they would move to USA, Australia, yeah. So the Ramadan tent project does not belong to a specific branch or sect of Islam. Their mission is built on several key principles. Universal inclusion is turning strangers into friends. So they welcome Sunni, Shia and Sufi Muslims. Yeah, I wondered about that. So Shia are there as well as Christians, Jews, Hindus, atheists. Diverse leadership and partners. While the initiative was started by Muslim students at SOAS, University of London, its leadership and volunteers base are diverse. Focus on social capital. The founder, Omar Salha, has often stated that the project is about building social capital, the connections between different groups of people, rather than focusing on theological differences between branches of Islam. Cultural representation. The event is often described as a celebration of Muslim culture and heritage as a whole. That's it. I'm just looking for a bio on the founder. Apparently he's a West Londoner by birth, so the government have made his family British at some point on our behalf. And we don't know what age he is, likely late 30s, I reckon. He was featured in 40 under 40 style lists as recently as 2022, so he must be under 44 then. And there was a massive Eid prayer in the Birmingham Park, and I'm just seeing who arranged that. And it was 30,000 people there, probably mostly Brummies or people who the government are going to make British soon. So the massive Eid in the Park event in Birmingham, frequently cited as Europe's largest Eid celebration, is primarily organised by the Green Lane Masjid and Community Centre. It takes place in Smallheath Park, and I think this started around about 2011, this first started. Yeah, I'm just looking at this now. And I'm just checking what the arrangement was at the prayer. So, men pray at the front, closest to the imam, the prayer leader. This is the standard arrangement for large Islamic congregational prayers. The general hierarchy of rows is typically imam at the very front, men occupying the front rows, children often placed between the men's and women's sections, women occupying the rows behind the men. So they've got designated barriers because it's so massive, apparently. In Islamic tradition, this setup is intended to maintain modesty and focus during the physical movements of prayers, bowing and prostrating. By having men at the front and women behind, it ensures that no one is distracted and that the focus remains entirely on the worship. I mean, not forgetting that native Brits are atheists, really. You know, we've been through Life of Brian in 1979 and things like that. And the Birmingham one was organised by the Green Lane Masjid and Community Centre. It's a major focal point for the Muslim community in the UK, established in the 1970s. I think they bought it in 1979. It was originally a library and public baths. Building history, yeah, it was built between 1893 or something. They bought it in 1979 for just £24,000 after it had been vandalised and left vacant. The mosque is formally linked to the Al-Hadith Salafi movement and often aligns its religious calendar, including the start of Ramadan and Eid with Saudi Arabian moon sightings. And it's Europe's largest Eid since 2011. They have been the lead organiser. Well, maybe people were organising before then, I suppose. While attendance peaked at over 100,000 people pre-pandemic, as of March 20th, the event saw a gathering of approximately 30,000 worshippers. And I wonder if we should read anything into that, you know. Are they losing flock or whatever? So I don't really know what I'm talking about here, but what branch of Islam is this Green Lane Masjid in Birmingham? It seems it's a Salafi branch of Sunni Islam. And it is the UK headquarters for the Markazi Jamiat al-Hadith, a movement that originated in South Asia in the 19th century. And I wondered if it was strict. It depends on your perspective, but in theological terms, it is categorised as purist or traditionalist. So the people of the Hadith movement emphasises direct scripturalism. They prioritise the Quran and Sahih over the later schools of Islamic jurisprudence. Anti-innovation, they are strict about avoiding bid'ah, the religious innovations, aiming to practice Islam exactly as the first three generations of Muslims did, the Salaf. Monotheism, they have a very strong focus on absolute monotheism, often speaking out against practices they view as saint worship or shrines. And this GLMCC is often viewed as conservative and disciplined. Here is how it looks in practice. Gender segregation high. Men and women have separate entrances, prayer halls and dedicated viewing areas for events. Dress code conservative. You will typically see men with beards and shorter trousers, Sunnah style, and women in niqabs or hijabs, though all are welcome to enter if dressed modestly. Global alignment. They usually follow Saudi Arabia for the start of Ramadan and Eid, rather than local UK moon sightings. Adherence to text. They take a literalist approach to scripture. Their sermons often focus on the authenticity of a practice based on specific hadith. Community perception. While their theology is conservative, they are often praised for being highly organised and civically engaged. Law and order, they're pro-law. Counter-extremism, they have historically taken a firm stance against political extremism. Social services, despite their theological strictness, they are very modern in their social outreach, etc. Well, then I wondered if anyone associated joined ISIS or whatever, you know. I mean, I'm guessing, well, no, I'm not guessing anything really, but I'm not casting a thing there or whatever. So there were individual cases of radicalisation occurred in Birmingham, but apparently it's complex. The mosque official stance, it's been one of the most vocal critics of ISIS in the UK because they follow a Salafi school of thought. They view ISIS not just as criminals, but as a theological deviation known as the Khawarij, an ancient sect that rebelled against mainstream Islam. So I take it they don't even agree with Islam's form of Islam, ISIS's form of Islam, I don't know. They have hosted several large-scale seminars titled things like ISIS, the origins of the Khariji sect, and the deception of ISIS. Their imams frequently argue that the actions such as killing innocent people, etc., and declaring other Muslims as infidels are strictly forbidden in the Salafi tradition they follow. High-profile cases, so there were some from Birmingham, but presumably, I don't know if they were, probably, no, definitely, I'm not saying anything. So a lady travelled to Syria with her toddler to join, and in her trial, it was noted she had been self-radicalised online, they say. Personally, I don't see how anyone could have thought ISIS was in any way good at all. You know, it was a death cult. So, I don't think there's any excuses at all, really. Despite their anti-ISIS stance, the mosque has faced criticism from external groups, hardline rhetoric. Some critics argue that because the mosque teaches a very conservative, literalist version of Islam, it could inadvertently create a fertile ground for more extreme ideas, even if the mosque explicitly tells people not to join such groups. And there was an undercover mosque Dispatches documentary in 2007 which filmed imams at Green Lane making controversial comments about women and non-Muslims. The mosque argued they were taken out of context, but it led to long-term scrutiny regarding their influence on the community. Funding freezes. As recently as 23-24, the UK government paused certain youth grants to the mosque to investigate historic allegations of hate speech by guest speakers. So Gemini is saying there's no evidence that it's an institution encouraged anyone to join ISIS. In fact, they acted as a major roadblock to recruiters by teaching that the group was un-Islamic. However, because they are a very conservative Salafi mosque, they remain a frequent subject of debate regarding where the line between traditionalists and extremists is drawn. Okay. Anyway, back to where I meant to start. It was about Nick Timothy said something about this, and he's an MP, Tory MP, and normally what would happen in this situation is that he would either be removed, have the whip removed, so he wouldn't be a Tory MP anymore, and he would be castigated by Kemi Badenoch, and, well, Keir Starmer did castigate him, or whatever. That's what would normally happen, but at last somebody sort of stood up. So Kemi Badenoch has done the double down, if you want to call it the chutzpah. You know, chutzpah seems to be the way the country's going. Like I say, like there's a lot of countries around the world, or tribes you could say even, they seem to be eco-based, and the people, a lot of them seem to want to move to the UK. We don't know why. Or America, or Australia, Canada. We don't know about if they rule out countries or continents, and what the rule is, the rule of thumb, that they rule those continents or things out. We don't know if that happens. But anyway, so usually what happened here is Keir Starmer would expect Kemi to sack Nick Timothy, but he's still there, and she's even reposted something. She stood up for him at question time. Yeah. I mean, I don't really follow mainstream media now, so I've not really seen all this stuff, because I find, like, Prime Minister's questions, the things that Tories and Lib Dems say are relevant. I would say what Reform and the Greens say, because they're the future probably, and also Keir Starmer, because he's currently the Prime Minister. In name only, really, but he's the one who sets the rules, really, because our electoral system is a 5-year dictatorship, really, especially if you get a big majority with 1/3 of the vote. Here's another quote, a tweet from Nick Timothy this week. This Labour MP wants me investigated and silenced. He makes my case for me. Labour's rebranded Islamophobia definition is designed to censor us. So, Mr. Khan, that's Sadiq Khan, the mayor, here's my reply. Get lost. So it's really good to see things. I mean, Rupert Lowe's been doing this sort of thing. It really is good at last to see that we might have a debate about this, rather than people being anxious about it and not saying anything. This seems to have been his original tweet that caused all the thingy. Too many are too polite to say this, but mass ritual prayer in public places is an act of domination. The Adhan, which declares there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger, is, when called in a public place, a declaration of domination. Perform these rituals in mosques if you wish, but they are not welcome in our public places and shared institutions, and given their explicit repudiation of Christianity, they certainly do not belong in our churches and cathedrals. I am not suggesting everybody at Trafalgar Square last night is an Islamist, but the domination of public places is straight from the Islamist playbook. Trafalgar Square belongs to all of us. It is a national memorial to our independence and our salvation. Last night was not like a televised football match or a St. Patrick's Day celebration. It was an act of domination and therefore division. It shouldn't happen again. Shulman's replied to him underneath and called him Goyim. Let's see if you condemn this or whatever. This is what Grok's saying about that post. Nick Timothy's post condemns a large-scale public Islamic prayer in Trafalgar Square during Ramadan as an assertion of dominance. So, yeah, it was a big surprise that he said it. I would say the whole situation is a sort of mess because if I'd got to vote in a referendum, it wouldn't have happened anyway. Say a referendum in 48, 58, 68, 78, whenever. Maybe if we'd got that, they wouldn't have happened, if we got a referendum. But the government decided what it did, Labour and Tory. So we're in the situation that we're in, and we've got the government and the opposition. We've got native Brits and we've got everybody else, and we don't know how it's going to go. Probably we had the best civilization ever, and we sort of spread that to America, Australia, and West Europe. Maybe even copied us, or I'm not saying that Britain's the best. I don't mean all that, because it might be even West Europe. It's the most desirable. I'm saying in terms of the way migration patterns. Yeah, we didn't colonise India, Pakistan, or we didn't colonise it. Settler colonisation was people move there and then you actually change the genetics. I mean, is that happening in Britain? That's up to each person to ask, yeah. So it's an awkward situation, and maybe there's an misunderstanding. I don't think Sadiq Khan and that are good. When I see these, like Sadiq Khan or any other Muslim politicians, really, I feel they're a bit off, really, and like I say, they're a bit sort of, well, they might view it as being defensive. I mean, I would say it's maybe it's sort of ego, this isn't going to work, I don't think, or whatever. But at the moment there's a bit of misunderstanding, I would say. But like I say, if I had the choice, it wouldn't have happened anyway, because in a referendum in 1948 I would have voted no on long distance unnatural immigration, multi-immigration, which it's never been tried before in humanity. It's always been sort of a reasonably natural. It's not been long distance. It's not been to do with air or flight or whatever, really. And yeah, but now that it has happened, we live in a Stasi state, so definitely I don't want any violence or anything like that. Definitely don't want anything like that. I want to avoid that as much as possible. Yeah, I can't think of how to talk about it. And it's really good to have Rupert Lowe, you know, and he seems to be leading the way. Maybe this is how Nick Timothy feels. He can say how he feels, you know. So Rupert Lowe's saying, I've been called racist and Islamophobic hundreds of times today for outlining Restore Britain's policy on banning halal slaughter, the burqa, Sharia law, cousin marriage and plenty more. I want to be really clear about our party's official response. We do not give a shit. And that was March the 19th, 26. So, well done, Rupert, you know, because I think we need to have a debate about this. You know, it's been sort of a hidden thing that the British have let flourish. Kemi Badenoch says we're naive. I would say it's because we're nice. It's not so much naivety. It's because we're nice. But and actually, that Rupert Lowe tweet that I just showed, I'm calling it a tweet just now, that could be groundbreaking. You know, it might be remembered forever as the point where Britain, I don't know what you would call it anyway, but to say I don't give a shit is groundbreaking on this issue, I would say, because in the old days the native Brit was expected to, especially the Labour Party, they would label you the R word, and most native Brits are still too afraid. I think that most native Brits at some point will vote for reform on a party similar. It'll be a bit like Ulster, how Ulster Unionists vote, although they were doing it for the wrong reason, in my opinion. If they wanted fairness over there, they always had Alliance to vote for, but they were voting for it sort of identity, and that's how I think all native Brits, or almost all, you'll always have some lefties who want to be seen as really nice and but in a very argumentative way or whatever, but you're always going to have them sort of in denial. But for the others, I think we're all going to vote a Reform Party just on this issue. Basically using the elections as referendums. We should have a referendum on this, I think. Although there's a chance I would lose it now, so I'm worried about that. But yeah, so we've reached that stage. So Keir Starmer's holding the old Labour Tory line, which was to call the natives the R word, really. That was the line. Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, directly addressed the controversy surrounding the Trafalgar Square thing that Nick Timothy commented on, which was on March the 18th, 26. In his post, Keir stated, I'm proud of our tolerant and diverse country. And remember, I see him as the most intolerant Prime Minister we've ever had, and a very intolerant person, in my opinion. I'm proud that in Trafalgar Square we celebrate all faiths. That's British values. I think the British people decide the British values, and that means everyone, you know. So all the people that have come from countries where there's a high FGM for the women. I mean, I can think of one country that's 100% for the women between age 15 to 48, because I've checked it on Gemini. There's many of them that are British now. They have British values, in my opinion, because it would be wrong not to. So I don't know if they still feel that way about FGM. In the British citizenship thing, you're meant to reject it totally in the pub quiz values test, you know, citizenship test. But whether they have in practice, we don't know, and maybe someday they'll have an MP in favour of it. So that's British values. British values are the British people, and if the British people change, you've got I've changed. You've got new British values, you know. That's my view of it. To say a lot of these values aren't British values, I would say would be being the R word or being thing, because we don't know if these groups see others as Keir or Kafir or whatever it is, Keir, other religions or whatever. The comments from Nick Timothy are shameful, so says Keir. Kemi Badenoch should do the right thing and sack him. This was accompanied by a video clip where he elaborated further, accusing the Tory party of having a problem with Muslims, Yeah, he said that at Prime Minister's questions. Because they only seem to criticise public religious events when Muslims are involved. He compared it to other faith celebrations in the square, such as Hindus marking Diwali, Jews celebrating Hanukkah, Christians performing the Passion of Christ, or Muslims praying, describing these as signs of Britain's diverse, quote, strength. I mean, and keep in mind that most British natives are atheists now. I don't know if Keir is. I'm guessing he governs as an atheist, but he might pay and do things to practice as a Christian or something. I think his wife's Jewish and his children are being brought up as Jews. I don't know about him personally. Most of us are atheists, so we have to watch on as British Hindus mark Diwali, British Jews celebrate Hanukkah, British Christians perform the Passions of Christ, or Muslims praying, etc. But that's just the top of it. I mean, we've also got the Albanian Independence Day. Well, that's an Independence Day, it's not a religion, but we're going to have all sorts of religious things going on now because the governments have brought people in, which they feel is best for the country. We're a fantastic country, and the Labour and Tories have decided to bring lots of people in, and it's going to make us even better, you know. Starmer's response came after Tory Shadow Justice Secretary Nick Timothy posted criticising the event as mass ritual prayer in public places. They do this in East London as well, on the streets, the council house streets. So you'll live in a council flat in London during Ramadan, or you might have what seem to be lots of Bangladeshi British, and they all seem to be from the same region of Bangladesh. It feels as if chain migrations went on, maybe even cousin marriage. I don't know. So there's not much diversity going on amongst the community. That might be the same for most of these things. It's very homogenous. Yeah. Starmer called Timothy's remarks utterly appalling and urged Tory leader Kemi Badenoch to remove him from the shadow cabinet. This sparked significant debate online, with some praising Starmer, others criticising. I'm just going to take a look at the tweet. Yeah, it took Grok a while to find this, but in the past, Starmer has distanced himself from the Ramadan Trent Project, who they're the ones who hosted the Trafalgar Square open iftar and prayer. In 2021, he pulled out after concerns were raised primarily by the Board of Deputies of British Jews and reporting in the Jewish Chronicle about tweets and views expressed by the Ramadan's Tent Project's CEO Omar Saha. This included support for boycotting Israeli dates produced in occupied territories, linked to the BDS movement, retweets promotion of groups like Friends of Al-Aqsa, Cage and Mend, which some critics viewed as controversial, or pro-Palestine advocacy with alleged ties to Islamist views. Labour described the decision as mutual with the organisers, and Starmer went on to attend other iftars, e.g. one by the Labour Muslim Network. The withdrawal drew criticism from some Muslim groups and pro-Palestine activists who accused Starmer of discriminating against Muslims or caving to pro-Israel lobbying. The Ramadan Tent Project and others called media reports distorted or misleading. Yeah, so there we go, that was 2021. I mean, personally, I think it's hard for a Brit to talk about Palestine in terms of sympathy. So we'll get that going on as well. Although the thing about Palestine is, I think there might be three ways to view it, three ways that people support the Palestinians. One is where you just think it's been unfair what's happened to them. Another is you might be a far left socialist who's always anti-West, really, in a way. Maybe not, I'm just saying that. That might be a stereotype, I don't know. And then another is it might be a sort of ego thing to do with identity and not really to do with Palestinians at all. I don't know. I'm just saying, guessing, you know. So personally, I've got sympathy with the Palestinians as just what's happened to them and the sense of my sense of British values. That might not be the same as others, because that depends on who the British people are in terms of passports and citizenship. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about now. Yeah, the likes of Professor David Betts says he reckons there might be civil war by 2030, and Colonel Kemp, I can't remember his first name, he's also suggesting that now. That's just an opinion, you know, or based on their using their logic and analysis, you know. Yeah, so we're really in the right middle, but I hope it leads to a big debate anyway, you know, because we really need it. Usually, Keir would call, the Prime Minister would call, in this case, Nick Timothy MP, the R word. He said that he was as bad as Tommy Robinson, which is, again, showing ignorance because he doesn't really understand what Tommy's saying. I mean, Tommy is regarded as a civic nationalist. There seems to be 3 types: civic, ethnic, or cultural, which is, yeah, whereas others are open borders or whatever, you know, in general. That's the way it is. Yeah, so usually what happens here is Nick Timothy said what he said. Keir would tell him to resign. Kemi would sack him. That hasn't happened. Kemi stood her ground. And as you see from what you've saw by Kemi, she's pretty based on this herself. She's comparing it to her Nigerian upbringing and Nigerian immigration policy, etc. So she's got that. I mean, in the past, I think she's asked Parliament for more visas for young Nigerians in 2018 or something like that. Maybe she's changed her mind, I don't know, but I'll try and find that, but I don't think I can. No, I couldn't find it. I mean, people post it on X quite a lot, you know, it's from around about 2018 or something. She was saying, I don't know, about her constituency, etc. But anyway, I mean, in the end, it's all about fairness, and that's what people want. So it doesn't matter where they come from. If it's fairness, values, conduct. But it seemed that Britain was really nice in that way, and a lot of people around the world maybe don't feel that way about their own societies. I don't know. Yeah, so it doesn't really matter. But in this case, Kemi Badenoch stood her ground, and hopefully that's a turning point. And I think a lot of people who vote Labour or Greens, Lib Dem, even Tory, want to vote Reform, but they're too afraid because they're too nice, and they think it's a bad thing. They've been taught by Labour and the Tories and the far left and Lib Dem, etc., that it's bad. You're a bad person if you do that. But they want to on one issue, on immigration. And I'm hoping that this moment might be that sort of point where, at the moment, Reform have reached a peak. They reached a peak at 36% around about December. And now it's down back to like 26% or something. But we've got Restore Britain coming along who are even better. And I hope everyone, at the moment, because most people don't know what's going on with politics, because either they're working or they're not interested in politics. So they'll know about Reform, but they'll not really maybe know about Restore Britain yet. Hopefully they'll all move to Restore Britain on one issue. Maybe we need a referendum on this issue, you know, so it's not a Labour or Tory thing. You know, we used to have the Brexit Party for a while, which was really a one issue thing. We really need an immigration referendum party, I would say, maybe something like that. But I'm not even sure that I could win it now for the way I want it to go. But I hope that people move from the SNP Plaid Cymru, who are they want Scotland and Wales to change faster than Labour want it to change. And someday their core current vote are going to be very angry at SNP and Plaid Cymru once they realise the situation. So hopefully they'll all move to reform at least, or restore Britain preferably, as a protest vote. I don't believe in the party hamper system. That's all we've got at the moment. Maybe it'd be better if we had a referendum. Alright, that's all for now. Bye bye.